Hey y'all, it's Nancy the Handy Scandy here from Imagine Crafts. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to make these two beautiful poppy cards using VersaColor Reinkers in the colors Canary and Cardinal, as you can see on the screen. I'll be using those as watercolor, and I will also be using the Turquoise ink pad as watercolor. But in the meantime, before we get there, I am stamping out this beautiful poppy background stamp with VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink. Now this is a very wet ink, so you want to make sure that you allow that to dry. And there are a couple different ways you can do that. You can either allow it to air dry naturally, so you stamp it, you set it aside, and you just give it, it'll need a long time. Just give it time to dry till it's dry. Or you can hurry up that drying time by hitting it with your heat tool. You can blot up excess of the wet ink with some scrap paper, maybe some printer paper, something lightweight and something that also won't transfer color. So you want to blot it up and then go to a clean spot, and then blot it up and then go to a clean spot. And you might have to do that several times. And finally, you can always heat emboss in, I would recommend clear. That way, if you have any rogue powder crystals, I don't know, what do you call them? Powder dust? It's not going to show up on your project. So anyway, just make sure that ink is dry before you go on to the painting. And you can see that I created my little palette from yellow to red, and then I created two orangey red shades in between. And right now I am just stamping out, or just painting out the yellow, the canary. And I'm using the wet on wet technique. I find that works best for me. So every now and then you'll see me come in and spray down my whole panel. You'll also see me spray down my, I'm just going to call them paints, though they're inks. You'll see me spray them down as well, because sometimes the viscosity is just too thick and I need it to be a little more thin. So wet on wet technique, it just works best for me, especially when I'm trying to blend colors, which you can see I'm trying to do now. So like I said, using water to thin things down, to get that consistency that you want. And just layers. It's all about the layers. So I laid down the yellow on all of the flowers, mostly focusing on the tips of the flowers, but in the end I just kind of went down and dirty and painted the whole flower, which is fine because you're going to add those layers as you see me doing here. Now I'm trying to build my color intensity, so I went from the yellow to that next kind of corally color, and then I go on to add more of that kind of reddish orange or orangish red, and then the full-on red, which is what I'm doing now, just to add that intensity. And it's layer upon layer upon layer. And I like to add more water to it. You can see I'm kind of dabbing it on to get those colors to flow and to blend. And I just think it's really fun. I love watching the magic of the colors blend and just to see it flow like that. Now, if you get any excess, if you get pooling or excess that wants to go beyond where you want it, just dab it up. You saw me do that. Just dab it up. And if you feel like when you dab, you're dabbing up your color, that's okay. Just lay a little bit more down. So it can take some time and some experience, lots of practice, to find the right viscosity of your ink / paint and to get the correct amount of water. And a lot of times it's trial and error, but over time you'll just get the feel for it. And it's something that I really love to do. I love to watercolor. I don't do it enough. And you can watercolor with so many different mediums. Reinkers is just one of them. And you'll see that I use the Turquoise ink pad in the VersaColor ink pad versus the Reinkers, because I needed the turquoise to create the green. You can see I've got that little puddle of green right there. I just dabbed the ink pad down onto my work surface, added some of the yellow to it, and then I had green to do all my stems and all of the buds. And yeah, I go back in a little bit with a little bit more of the turquoise because I just want a different shade of the green. And so you'll see that as well. And it's more of a blue-green, but I think it just adds a little bit of differentiation between the buds versus the stem. So here, that's exactly what I'm doing there. It's just adding a little bit more of the blue to get that kind of blue-green. And then I put it on all of the pods or the buds, and just to help them stand out a little bit more from the stems. And again, just going on with my layers. You just go until you get the intensity and the movement and the blending that you want. When it pleases your eye, stop. It's okay, just stop. You'll know when it's time, and if you don't know when it's time, walk away from it for a little bit. Come back to it with fresh eyes, and you'll know where to go from there. Now, I added so much color that I lost a lot of my highlights. So here I'm coming in with just some of that pure yellow, which again is the Canary Reinker, and I'm just going back over the tips of my petals, dabbing and spreading and painting and just using whatever movement, whatever technique or stroke I need to get that, again, ink/paint into the places that I need it. And this is sped up like super, super fast. So please know that I did not show my whole process and that it took much longer than 8 minutes to do this. But I enjoy it, and for me it's very cathartic, and I'm all about the poppies right now. I'm not even sure what that's about, but I'm loving them. So there I was just dabbing up some of the excess, some of the red and the yellows were trying to bleed out onto the background. So I just dabbed it up. If you get it while it's wet, it's really easy, just dab. And then I hit it all with my heat tool because I have a lot of the deep red, the Cardinal. It's super intense and it's really thick. So I wanted it to be that way because it dries back any kind of watercolor pigment, whatever you're using for your watercolor pigment, is going to dry back much softer. So I wanted that intense red. So I made sure that I put it down really thick. And it just takes time to dry. So I hit it with the heat tool for a little bit. Some places are not dry yet. And this is where I have used the VersaColor ink pad in the color Turquoise. And I just dabbed it out on my work surface again. And I'm just using it as paint to fill in those background spaces. And I just lay a little bit of color down, and then I go back and I try to intensify like some of the creases, some of those places that would have shadows. And then all on the left-hand side, I put a shadow on all the left-hand side. And then I thought it needed some shimmer, so in comes the sheer shimmer spray. This is in the color Sparkle, and I just love it. So I did not show my construction process or my assembly process just because I wanted to focus more on the painting. And yeah, I would just say use a die cut, use your favorite die cut that you want to put onto your project, and layer them up. If you want to put a sentiment, I stamped and then die cut these very simple sentiments, thanks and hi, and then I layered them up, and I added some little confetti from this Calls for Confetti, and I'm done. What do you guys think? Let me know. Let me know. There's so many different ways that you can use these ink pads, and so many different ways that you can come up with watercolor medium. So guys, until next time, this has been Nancy, the Handy Scandy for Imagine Crafts. Thank you for joining me today. If you are not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like, drop me a comment downstairs. I'd love to connect with you down there. And until then, this is Nancy, the Handy Scandy, as I've said, for Imagine Crafts. And until next time, I'm out.